How you doing? I'm Big D. Thanks for stopping in. I do appreciate it. What we're going to talk about today is gold mainly, but you know that I don't usually have any show without believing it has a lot to do with silver. Whatever happens with gold always follows, silver always follows. So we have to talk about America's gold today because something is very strange, which is happening right now. I'm sure by now you've heard about the former CIA official was just arrested after investigators found more than 300 government gold bars in his home, worth over $40 million. Now, apparently, he requested many of these gold bars over time for work expenses. Wow. Can you imagine if you had work expenses that you needed gold bars for? Well, I guess CIA agents, they need that. Now, what those work expenses are, no one seems to know. And then just days after Trump posted on True Social, time to audit Fort Knox. I think this is a lot to do with each other. Is the gold really in Fort Knox? We can only guess. Half of you are thinking, finally, the audit we've been waiting for. And it triggered for something much bigger around gold. But I can guess what the other half of you are thinking. One second. Okay. I guess what the other half of you are thinking. So the president promises this 2 years ago and nothing happened. Why would this time be any different? But the more I started digging into this story, the more I realized we might all be asking the wrong questions, right? The real question no one is asking. The conversation is all around whether or not the gold is there. And we all have our own beliefs on that. I personally believe we have a better chance of finding Bigfoot in Fort Knox than we do the gold. But that's neither here nor there. In fact, there's a much more interesting question we should be asking. Pull up the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury balance sheet right now. Pause this show and check it out, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And you'll find the line item for gold. Next to it, you'll see a number that makes absolutely no sense. Now we have gold at right around, what, $4,300 today? You're going to find that line item showing $42.22. Is this an accounting illusion? Well, it is not. This is the official price of every single ounce of gold that the United States government owns. Not $4,500, not $4,000, $42.22 an ounce. A price that was set in 1973 that has never been updated. Now, if we took Fort Knox and we assumed all the gold is there, that would be 150 million ounces of gold at roughly $42 an ounce. Now we're looking at $6 billion worth of gold. But if you were to price that gold at current spot prices today, now that number jumps up closer to $500 billion worth of gold. So then I started asking myself, why would the world's most powerful government leave such a massive asset so severely undervalued on their books? leaving it that way through debt crisis, through bank failures, recessions. Then I realized that the answer is actually very simple and deliberate. The moment that the United States updates that number, they've done something that they cannot undo. The gold threatens the dollar system. They have put back gold at the center of the monetary system by revaluing. And for a monetary system that is reliant on paper confidence, that is an existential threat. What I mean by that is that the dollar is not backed by gold. The dollar is backed by two things: oil and trust. And the oil backing the dollar, well, the petrodollar agreement, those days are numbered. And some of the countries have been fighting against this. Now it's crumbling in front of our very eyes. As far as trust goes, well, trust, you have to believe that the US government is going to honor its debt obligations, that the bonds are safe, that the US Constitution's holding your money, that they will honor their promises. It's a big ask, but this is where gold comes into play, because gold doesn't need a central banking promise. It doesn't rely on policy and politics. No, gold has outlasted every empire, every currency, every monetary system that has tried to replace it. So when the institution that's telling you that gold doesn't matter is the same one who's refusing to update a number because it would prove that gold does, well, that should tell you something. But not only that, think about this. Every central bank on earth right now, they all hold gold. Not only do they hold it, but they've been buying the most gold over the last 5 years in modern history. So if gold is really such an outdated relic, if the system we live in really doesn't need gold at all, why are they, number one, buying it like it's cheap? Why did they wait for so long until the gold was creeping up on almost $6,000 not long ago? That's an ounce. Now, the answer is that they are positioning for what's coming next. They know how this ends, and they want to make sure that their gold is in their hands before it happens. So the moment that gold gets revalued, it's not just an accounting update. It's an admission by the United States that the dollar has lost a majority, almost all of its purchasing power since 1973. That's when you realize that the $42.22, well, it's never made sense until you understand that it was never about what the real value of gold was. It was always about protecting the dollar's image. So why is all of this being brought up right now? And what does history show us about who wins and who gets wiped out if they actually do it? To answer that question, we have to go back, because this happened before in America. In 1934, President Roosevelt revalued gold from $20.67 an ounce to $35 an ounce. Not because that was fair market value, but because he wanted to revalue it even higher to increase the price of America's gold reserves. By doing that, the balance sheets, the sheet that looks exponentially better. Now, anyone holding gold during that reevaluation time, who already had their gold, they saw their wealth increase by nearly 70% as a result of this revaluation. By anyone holding dollars, anyone holding the fiat currency, so to speak, they had the exact opposite effect. losing nearly 40% of their purchasing power overnight. But here's the kicker. President Roosevelt didn't just revalue the gold higher. First, he made sure to repatriate that gold. Many of you are probably familiar with the gold confiscation or Executive Order 6102, where it was required to turn in your gold bullion at $20.67 an ounce in exchange for fiat currency or the dollar. It was only then, once they had the gold bullion, that they revalued it higher once it was out of the hands of the American people and in the hands of the government. Now, rare and unique gold coins were exempt from this executive order, which I always called out because I get questioned on this time from people that I know. And this is why it matters so much that when you purchase your gold and silver, you work with someone who understands gold laws and as well as the concerned about that you can protect yourself against these situations. And what happened in 1971 when President Nixon, well, he removed the United States from gold. Having our gold removed from our currency was a very bad thing, in my opinion. The gold, of course, spot surged, and it was revalued higher twice to $38 and then to the $42.22, where it still sits today. But everyone who held their wealth in the fiat currency in paper, in dollars, they lost nearly half of their purchasing power over the next decade, which is when I realized that in all of these cases, the people who protected their wealth and actually gained wealth on the other side of the revaluation were the ones who saw what was coming next. They were the ones who positioned before the revaluation happened. Because of you, if you waited, well, the rules have already changed. The wealth transfer has already started in the announcements. That's just a way that to let everyone else know. But I'd be remiss to not bring up something else that a lot of people skip over when they talk about gold revaluation. In 1971, when the President Nixon closed the gold window, what happened to all of the nations that were holding dollars that were promised that they could convert those dollars into gold? Well, when the United States defaulted on that promise, they were all stuck with the dollar, whatever they wanted it or not, whether they wanted it or not. And those promises, there was nothing more than a broken claim on gold. The United States got to keep the gold, physical gold. Everyone else was stuck with this fiat dollar. And today, when you think about today, people always ask about physical versus digital gold. When we talk about digital gold and all the gold that's out there, the gold ETFs or tokenization, if you just want price exposure, that's fine. That's fine. Go get a gold ETF. But if you are concerned about counterparty risks, if you are concerned about what's happening to the value of the dollar and you want to have real gold, you have to realize that a promise is not the same thing as a real deal. Promises can and have been broken, especially when it comes to physical gold. If it's not in your hands, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Now, this thing is the same thing goes for silver. Not all gold is treated equally under the law. And that's why I always encourage you guys, if you have any questions and you want a second opinion on your personal gold or your silver strategies or the gold and silver you own or what to buy, just leave a comment in the comment section. Now, I don't know if gold repatriation and revaluation is happening tomorrow. In fact, I want to hear from you. What do you guys think? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. How close are we to this happening? Do you think it's going to happen at all? And if so, how close are we? I wish I could tell you the exact timeline, but what I do know is that now that a top CIA official with $40 million worth of gold bars in his home, now we have the President of the United States calling for an official audit of Fort Knox. We have central banks buying the most gold that they have in modern history over the last 5 years with no signs of slowing. And we have treasury bonds, U.S. treasury bonds that no one wants. The demand is absolutely sinking while we are sitting on nearly $40 trillion in debt. There is a crisis point, and we are fast approaching it. And if the Federal Reserve themselves are even doing research on gold revaluation, issuing their own notes about what it would do to the U.S., well, that tells you that that this isn't nothing. We started this question, and whether or not the gold is actually in Fort Knox, as I mentioned, I don't think that's the most important question. I actually think the question that we are all and should be asking ourselves isn't whether the gold is in there, but whether you personally have gold in your hands to protect yourself against what's coming next. Again, if you have any questions about that process, leave a comment in the comment section. But more than that, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Thank you for stopping in, and let me know what you think. I hope you have a great rest of your day. God bless.